Story 1. Trash collector, person riding on the back. I spent a summer in college doing this to make money. A friend's father was an executive and got us the jobs. My friend lasted less than a week. Many people lasted a day or less. It's physically exhausting and even more disgusting. It gave me a lifelong appreciation for how hard some of those workers work. Also, if you ever want to get rid of anything, leave them a tip or a case of beer. I saw people take virtually anything, legal or not, for a 12-pack of beer left on the container. As others have pointed out, if you're going to ask them to take something you probably should not, leave the tip or package on your barrel shortly before they typically arrive, along with a note saying nothing more than "thank you." They will understand. In my brief stint over 20 years ago, we'd get hot sandwiches, beer, cash, sodas, water, and so on, and people would leave air conditioners, furniture, and other items. The tip often matched the workload involved. One person gutted his entire kitchen, met us at the stop that morning to help load the truck, and gave us $100 in cash. I made $12 per hour at the time, which was a lot for a teenager in the 1990s, and the extra cash was great. Story 2. Digging with a shovel. Movies and TV shows have characters burying a body 6 feet deep right by large mature trees after a few minutes or hours of digging. It would take all night, possibly days, to dig a hole that size and depth with any roots nearby. That is why you always hear in real life that a body was in a shallow grave. Story 3. Loading and unloading trucks. Working in a non-air-conditioned building that is loud, over 90 degrees Fahrenheit during the summer and 20 degrees Fahrenheit during the winter, with a small dashboard that constantly beeps when you are slowing down or not keeping pace with your personal best averages, all while being constantly pulled off your truck to help other trucks catch up. The worst job in the world. Utter slave labor. Story 4. Hospital laundry washing services. The sheets are soaked in various bodily fluids and solids. Story 5. I've worked at a couple of factories, and let me tell you, they are not equal. Years ago, I worked at a refrigeration company called True Manufacturing. It was an absolute hellhole. They put me in the steel building cutting and bending sheet metal. There was no air conditioning, and management thought managing the 90 degrees Fahrenheit indoor heat was solved by giving everyone a single cheap popsicle. Their inventory management and logistics were practically non-existent. They had about one manager per 50 people, and that manager was typically running a machine or nowhere to be found. They would write you up for leaning on things. Even when I had a 20-plus minute wait for more materials, I wasn't allowed to lean or sit. Story 6. Being a sulfur porter. Manually carrying heavy loads of sulfur up and down the sides of a volcano in East Java, Indonesia. Toxic fumes and fear of eruption, not to mention backbreaking work in all weather conditions. Now, Story 7. According to my dad, trash pickup was a difficult job. He worked on a trash truck for one shift before deciding it was not for him. This was back in his early 20s before he got his life together. But he still talks about it and respects the people who do it because it is such a terrible job. Story 8. Dog training. I do not mean self-employed, which might actually be fun, but at one of the major chain pet stores. They do not care about improving dogs' behavior. It is just a way to make easy money. My first class included a terrier, a Labrador retriever, a mastiff that definitely could have eaten the terrier, and their owners, all crammed into a space that was maybe 10 by 10 feet. After 10 minutes of absolute chaos, I bowed out. Story 9. Working in a quiet shop, just standing there all day wishing there were things to do, knowing I am wasting my life. Story 10. Emergency medical services in an urban setting. Then factor in the time spent writing each report. Factor in the nights with no sleep. Then factor in the poor pay. Story 11. Any job undocumented migrants are willing to do, usually poor conditions, difficult backbreaking work, underpaid, constantly in fear of being deported just by reporting to work. There is a reality many of them face that the average American would not begin to imagine, yet the benefits they provide to our way of life are immeasurable. Story 12. Manage internal legacy applications created in the 1990s with no documentation, supporting over 5,000 clients connected to the server using the same account and operating as a system administrator. Story 13. Any physically demanding job or one where there is a constant threat from other people. For me, working as a porter in a kitchen is especially difficult. Cleaning dishes all day is exhausting. Story 14. Diesel mechanic at a waste management company. We always assign new employees to jobs in the hoppers. It does not get any worse than that. If they make it through day 1, day 2 is easier. Story 15. Delivering ice in the depth of summer. One of the first summer jobs I ever had. I thought it would be literally cool in both senses of the word, but it was just a regular van with bags of ice piled in the back. I had to drive around the local area, delivering ice if they wanted any. No air conditioning. When I braked, all the ice and melt water would surge to the front. The back of the van was not closed off, so all that water would flow to the front, soaking my feet. When starting again, it would all surge to the back. It did not help that the brakes in that van were so bad I literally had to stand on the pedal to stop the vehicle. It was the only job I quit after just one day. Story 16. Hotel housekeeping. I lasted one day and walked off the job after finding that one of the guests had defecated in the sheets and used them to clean himself. I thought, no way, no way. I didn't even return my cart or inform anyone. I just walked out. Story 17. Commercial fisherman. I know someone who did that once. Based on what he described, I would likely do the same. Story 18. Almost any outdoor job during the summer, especially in states that have made it law that employers do not have to provide breaks, shade, or water to outdoor workers. Story 19. Programmer. One day is enough. You sit down, bright-eyed, ready to build something clever. Then you see that the codebase is a spaghetti of global variables and cryptic abbreviations written in 2002 by someone named Jebediah, who was convinced comments were for the weak. The delivery pipeline fails, but only on Fridays. Nobody knows why. You have to use Jira, probably the most annoying software in the universe, aside from Microsoft Teams, which you always have to use. Jira is full of tickets written like riddles by a project manager who has since left the company and was supposedly fascinated by the United States Marines. Probably means he also ate crayons. Stack Overflow has no answers, only people arguing over tabs versus spaces. The artificial intelligence everyone maniacally praises has all the answers, half of them wrong, the other half plainly stupid. Then you do a quick fix. Inevitably, it breaks production. Nobody knows why. You ask for help. They say, oh yeah, we just restart the service manually. Crashes sometimes, right? At 4:59 p.m., someone says, hey, can you just make this tiny change real quick? Then there is the Scrum Master or Scrum Mistress. Literally zero knowledge about software, computers, dignity, or basic logic, but all the passion for telling you how to do your job. Or worse, coaching you. I guess they're all secretly hatched somewhere in North Korea to disrupt our capabilities. Hell is not fire and brimstone. Hell is being told the deadline is flexible, and then being asked why it is not done yet. And yes, it is in JavaScript. Also, you have to set up printers and maintain all the computers of your family, your extended family, your neighbors, and your dentist's dog. Story 20. Laying polypipe on a farm. Southerners know this one. It is irrigation, so it is always as hot as it can be. It is also sometimes in cornfields, so it is very humid with no breeze. The tractor must maintain 4 to 5 miles per hour, and you have to walk behind it with a shovel to keep the pipe going into the trench correctly. Story 21. I have had a wide variety of unpleasant jobs, from being a broke, uneducated kid to earning a master's degree. They have all been difficult. The work itself is bearable, but add in people and their psychological challenges, and it does not matter. People not working on themselves at home take it out at work, and this is a universal issue at every level unless society shifts to prioritize or even legislate and enforce healing. Story 22. Fast food. I worked at Del Taco for 4 years. One day, a girl who had just started her first day turned to me and asked who she should talk to about quitting. Story 23. Unloading 100-pound bags of powdered synthetic marble mixture from a full train car, each one by hand. I did it when I was young and full of energy and did not know any better. Story 24. Worked in a butcher shop. I did some part-time work while I looked for permanent employment at 17 or 18 years old. The smell of opening sealed beef turned my stomach. Story 25. Greenhouse laborer. I have done restaurant work, construction, warehouse, and landscaping, and I am now a truck driver. Greenhouses are actual hell. 85 degrees Fahrenheit with humidity to match, in the middle of winter in Michigan. I lasted 3 hours. Story 26. Plucking chickens, trapping gophers, hanging in 95-degree temperature while being bitten by deer flies and horse flies, and being responsible for telling a known psychopath that his loan has been rejected. Story 27. Loading and unloading semi-trailers by hand, and I am not talking about with pallets either. I mean piece by piece stacking them in a semi-truck, floor to ceiling. In Florida, nonetheless. No thanks. Story 28. Worked as a roofer for 1 day, on a tree trimming crew for 1 day, and as a concrete contractor for 4 days. Car wash for 1 day. I could continue. Story 29. I saw a couple of people mentioning loading and unloading. With a forklift and pallet jack, it honestly didn't seem that bad to me. I did that job for a couple of years in absolutely miserable weather conditions, including minus 40 degrees Celsius and Fahrenheit blizzards outdoors. I regularly unloaded some truly large and heavy items. So, I don't really understand the complaints. The only time I find that job miserable is when there are heavy pallets wrapped in a way that the pallet jack can't get under, and the truck is completely filled to the brim, especially when hung over. Even so, if the pay weren't so low, I wouldn't mind doing it part-time for extra side money. Now, jackhammering cement, that was a truly awful job. Cement work in general was awful. That said, I am the type of person who doesn't mind physical work, and the weather doesn't bother me much. Story 30. Many years ago, about 40 years, I really needed money in the summer. I worked as a teacher's aide during the school year. I took a job as a maid at a local Holiday Inn. I lasted 2 days. I was much younger than most of the women who had no problem cleaning about 10 rooms a day. I came home the first day, sat in the bathtub, and cried because I was so tired and sore. Story 31. I worked at a slaughterhouse as a butcher. I completed a few days of training without any issues before being informed that my wage was $2 lower than what was agreed upon at hiring. I was already there and had quit my previous job, so I decided to continue. On the first day after training, I was assigned to a line and told to shadow someone for an hour before taking over. After shadowing that person for an hour, I walked out and did not return. Story 32. You can get the feel for most jobs in a single day. It might not be the job itself, but the company culture that makes a job difficult. That was the case with my last employer. I knew immediately I was not going to like working there. Story 33. I did a vacation job once at a biofuel plant, cleaning the machines that heated and squeezed the oils out of certain seeds. They shut the plant down but kept the heat on because the seeds tended to form a hard peel inside the machine over time. We used bronze tools and had to crawl into small, barely breathable, very hot spaces, scraping this hard residue off everything. It was slippery due to oil, hot, and required protective clothing, helmets, gas masks, and machinery. There were pins and sensors sticking out of the walls everywhere. It was very dark, so you would often hit these things with your head or body. I lost nearly 7 kilograms of body weight after those 2 weeks cleaning the machines. Another problem was that the equipment looked like huge metal silos, so all the parts bolted to the sides were curved to fit the silo's shape. Once, I had to remove a plate covering a sensor, and when I unscrewed it, it exploded outward and hit my head. If I had not been wearing a helmet, I might have been seriously injured. I saw stars for half an hour. Story 34. If you grew up in the Midwest and ever detasseled or roped corn, you know what hard labor is all about. Story 35. Tower climber working on a 300-foot tower with everything iced up, snow falling, and wind blowing in minus 20 degrees Celsius. There is no escape from the cold for 3 to 4 hours once you start climbing. Story 36. I went to a staffing agency looking for work. They placed me in a vegetable processing warehouse in the industrial area. The problem was I'm 6 feet 5 inches tall, and I was working with people who were 5 feet 4 inches or shorter. I lasted 5 hours of slightly bending over to reach the table to process the vegetables by removing the leaves. It was an 8-hour shift, and my back was on fire, screaming for mercy. It was also boring because everyone except the manager spoke Spanish. They looked at me like, "Why are you here? You literally don't fit." I got the manager to sign off on my 5 hours and left. They were processing tomatillos. Whenever I see one, my back gets a funny sensation. Story 37. Did drywall for one day. Being in the 1990s and having no personal protective equipment made that a miserable experience. Maybe it is better now, but never again. Story 38. I briefly worked emptying garbage cans at an amusement park. We were required to wear all black in 90-degree heat. Story 39. Retail. I used to work in corporate for a small apparel retailer, and we helped out in the field on Black Friday. It was always the most boring day of the year for me because I was more in the way than anything. I would just do laps around the store and straighten up merchandise for 6 hours, and it was the slowest 6 hours of my life. Even when I had customer interactions or time at the register, it didn't make the time pass any faster. Much respect for all of you, because even on the busiest shopping day of the year, I was so bored I could cry. Story 40. Debt collections. I did not actually do debt collections. I performed portfolio analysis. I refer to my brief employment with that company as working for the devil. Management was exactly the kind of people you imagine would own a debt collection company. They were unpleasant and backstabbing to each other. Story 41. Healthcare assistant jobs with personal care. It is not difficult for everyone, but if it is difficult for you, you will know within one day. Story 42. I volunteered to help load hay and get it to a barn before a random Texas summer thunderstorm. Never again. A word of advice. Farm boys have grown man's strength. You cannot keep up, so do not even try. Story 43. Fish gutted on a commercial day boat. Many live fish constantly coming aboard. Their throats swiftly cut and gutted while still alive. The boat rocks continuously. The smell of blood, guts, and death is strong. Paid well, though. Story 44. Septic tank cleaning. Try that job for a day or two, and you will never want to complain about a less demanding job again. Working at a low-cost restaurant often feels like you are cleaning a septic tank continuously. The number of times people would defecate on the floor or splatter everywhere while I was working in the service industry was astounding. Story 45. I work at a toy store as a stocker. I start at 4 a.m. and have to stock a number of cases within 4 hours. The person in charge was a 40-year-old who did not train anyone but still had to meet his quota. The system was difficult to work with. I did this job for 2 weeks and decided to quit. My next job was in construction, climbing inside a building-sized boiler. Sparks and welding slag fell from above. I loved it. Story 46. Police officer. I must watch too many videos of some of the intoxicated individuals they have to deal with and people who just cannot follow simple instructions such as putting their hands above their heads. Story 47. String out water pipe. I worked for a rural water company and my first job was gathering bundles of 10-foot PVC pipe and stringing them out, walking 15 steps, then dropping a pipe. Rinse and repeat for thousands of feet. Story 48. In my experience, there are two kinds of factory jobs. Factory jobs that are tolerable and factory jobs that are unpleasant. It only takes a few hours to figure out which is which. Story 49. I did 1 day of demolition work in a decaying parking garage, breaking concrete with a jackhammer above my head. Awful. Story 50. Hotel housekeeper. Clean 16 rooms, 16 toilets, 16 showers, 16 sinks. Make 16 beds, changing the sheets on about half of them. Vacuum 16 bedrooms and mop 16 bathroom floors. Then know that you will come back tomorrow and the next day and the next day. Story 51. Onion sorting. I had this job when I was 17 for less than a day. The smell, the soft onions your fingers would just go through. It was 35 years ago, and I can still remember that awful job. I lasted until lunch when I said, I'm just going to my car to grab my lunch. But once I got out, I just got in my car and drove away. I never even asked for a paycheck. Story 52. Anything related to customer service, including restaurants, hotels, retail stores, phone sales, or service. Any type of janitorial or maintenance work. Story 53. All of them. I have to work, but I know deep down I am not built for this system at all. Story 54. Picking broadleaf tobacco in July under a muslin tent in Connecticut. Payment was based on the number of bins picked. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.